Hello everybody and welcome to Manchester Explorer. This is a quick video that I decided to throw together this morning as I did a little bit of research about the area, as we are going to be checking out Stark Park on the north end of Manchester. But before doing so, we're going to check out what was once the location of the General John Stark homestead, as this originally was a 100-acre farm where General John Stark resided. His home ended up burning down. I don't have the exact year, as the information is very vague, but here's an artist's illustration of what it looked like. And on the left, you can see where the well is. You'll notice that there's a pivot mechanism that they use for leverage to pull water out of the well. But right here, there's a couple markers. Stating that he was the hero of Bennington, that's where there was a huge battle there, which he is well known for. And he died here during May 8th of 1822. And right here is where the original door stone was. So you would have stepped here and the door would have been pretty much where we're facing. And right here is the well, as I was showing you guys in that original picture, where you can see that mechanism or that lever. That's obviously not the original one, but it's just an example of what was there. But as you can see, this is dated to 1765. And I read somewhere that there's another stone with writing on it inside of the well. I'm not 100% positive if it's still here, but if it is, hopefully we can see it, but I don't think we can. But I believe, if I can recall the date, during 1865, the city purchased the property and they started to construct the youth detention center, which is in front of me. And that's where they sent all the delinquents of Manchester. They'd go to the youth detention center. And as we all know, there was a lot of controversy over the recent years, as there was a lot of prison guards that did horrible things to the children that were kept here. But anyways, let's head over to Stark Park. And I was amazed that there's really not much information about the homestead that once sat here. I do have another picture, which I believe is an artist's illustration of what it looked like after it received fire damage and they rebuilt it, and here it is. But the first picture that I showed you is what it likely would have looked like, as there's no documented photos of what the building looked like. I'll try to give you guys a shot of this YDC detention center, which is no longer being used. But there's a quick glimpse of it. And in the distance, I don't know if you can see that, there's a field up there with solar panels. That's where the Manchester dump used to be. But let's head down to Stark Park, as this little swath of woods right here has a path that leads down towards the Merrimack River. I've been down here, I don't know, about a dozen or so times. It's a really nice park. It's a great place to take a walk, go for a bike ride, let your dogs run around. And I can recall this area being fairly run down as the park got renovated, I don't know, maybe a couple decades ago now, but at one time it was in a pretty sad state. And if you do come mountain biking here or cycling in general, just watch your speed, as there's often people walking around here. You know, you don't want to be bombing around these corners doing 20 miles an hour, as there's a good chance that you will hit someone and that will ruin your day. I know, because I've been down here a few times and I've come around these corners and I've caught people walking, as this isn't only for mountain bikers. But if you take a right here, which I'm not going to do right now, there's a little trail system and it does a couple loops and it comes back to this area. It's one of the nicer parks in the city. There's a few obstacle courses here and there. I'm not going to show you guys every inch of this, but there's some balance beams here and whatnot. There's also a nice wooden sculpture up here that I'll show you guys. You know, if this was in a park in the middle of Manchester, this thing would be smashed due to idiots. So that's very pretty. Whoever did that, you have some talent. I'll try to get a better shot of it. Let me spin around here. Now we'll head up to Stark Park, which is a little bit of a climb, but I'll be all right. As I was saying, there's always a lot of people down here, so don't be bombing around at 20 miles an hour. There's also a community garden here. Hi guys. And up here is a large war memorial depicting General John Stark on a horse, which in my opinion is probably the nicest memorial within the city. And he deserves it. That was a very brave soul right there. He marched a troop of, I think it was 1,400 men to Bennington, Vermont, as there was a, I don't know, what could you explain it? There was a fort there with British soldiers, and it was also an ammo depot. And John Stark and his men pretty much wiped them off the map. And it was a pivotal battle to help us win the Revolutionary War, as we then obtained all the cannons and ammunition from the British. But this is Mr. Stark's resting site, as well as much of his family. I'll share an older picture of it here before the gate was built. And what you'll notice is there's headstones missing. I'm not sure as to why or what happened to them, as they're no longer here. And there's a commemorative plaque here. I'll take my helmet off so you guys can see it. And he passed during 1822 at his homestead, the first building that I showed you at the beginning of this video. The men who fought in that battle, they were very brave, as war was very brutal then. Not that it isn't now, but It was still very primitive. It was mostly hand-to-hand combat. They were, you know, they were fighting with muskets, cannons, and pretty much swords. Now we'll head up to the General John Stark Monument. And Mr. Stark also came up with the live free or die motto of the state of New Hampshire. When you think of the word patriot, that man was a patriot. Watch out, squirrels. And here's the memorial. Let's try to get a good angle that's out of the sun. And this was erected during 1948. Live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils. One of his famous quotes. But the statue itself has a marking etched onto it as it was completed in 1947. Sorry, I'm out of breath climbing that hill. I'm getting old. Yeah, I was right. There was with General John Stark in command, 1,400 men enlisted for 30 days and departed for Bennington from Charleston, New Hampshire. So that's a long walk. And I have been to Bennington, Vermont. Me and my wife stayed up there for 2 days, as there's also a large monument there. It's a very tall obelisk, which you are allowed to go into. You can go up it, and there's 360-degree views of Bennington and where the battlefield was. And it's also a beautiful town. There's a lot of beautiful 1800s mansions in the area. It's your typical Vermont tourist trap. That's the best way to explain it. But it's a good place to spend. You know, you can spend 2 days there. There's a few things to do. And it's a fairly inexpensive trip. And here's a few cannons. Imagine getting hit by one of those cannonballs. Those things weren't designed to be shot at tanks. Those were designed to be shot at people. Ouch. And there's also some lore in New Boston, New Hampshire, as it's where the Molly Stark Cannon now resides, which was taken from the Battle of Bennington. There's a lot of folklore about it. I'm not going to get into it right now, but you can look into the Molly Stark Cannon. Well, we're up here. I'll show you guys a few of these beautiful houses, and then we'll head over to John Stark's childhood home, which was originally near where the Amoskeag Dam is now, as the house was relocated, I believe, during 1969. But as you can see, there's some beautiful buildings up here. I'm sure there's some others that fell to neglect and fires as well, as some of these are fairly modern. I haven't delved into the history too much about them, but this is one of them right here that I do have an old photo of. And here it is. And those two gentlemen are applying some oil paint to that wrought iron fence. And that fence is over 100 years old, and it looks like it's brand new. That'll last another 200 years, as long as it's painted at least once every 30 years. As that old wrought iron it rusts, but it doesn't flake away like modern recycled stamp steel. That's the best way to explain it. it'll slowly wither away. But anyway, I'm gonna head to Elm Street to show you guys the childhood home of General John Stark. We're now on North Elm Street. This will give you guys a quick shot of this beautiful area. And this right here is one of my favorite buildings throughout the city. It's definitely in my top 5, and it may be my favorite, as it looks like something that came out of a medieval, you know, fantasy movie. And you can see the original stepping stone right there that people would step off their carriages. That's what they would step on. There's probably about 8 inches of pavement on top of it now, as that stone was originally a lot bigger. That's a beautiful building. And the inside looks just as nice as the outside. They don't build them like that anymore, folks. But all along this road, there used to be a lot more large mansions. Many of them just succumbed to neglect and fires. There were a few that were massive, which are no longer here. But there are photos that exist, and I will get to it at some point. Yeah, anywhere you see one of those stepping stones, like there's one out there also, like I said, those were used for people to step off their carriages. As back then the street was actually a lot lower than what it is now due to being paved. But you'll often just see them randomly and there'd be no building around, but there used to be a, when you see that, there used to be a building there. And coming up on my right is the childhood home of General John Stark. And this is the oldest building in Manchester, as this is a settler building. And before we go over it, I'll show you guys a few pictures of it when it was at its original location, down by the Amoskeag Falls, or where the dam is now. And here they are. And in this picture right here, I'll highlight where the house is, and in the background you can see the old governor's mansion up top, on top of the hill, where the Brady Sullivan Tower now sits. And I will get to that building at some point. Governor Smith Mansion, is that what it's called? I'm having a brain fart. Yeah, the Smith Mansion, I believe. But this was built around 1736, as there's no actual records of it, as the city of Manchester was nothing back then. This was just a settlement area. But I believe his father's name was Archibald Stark, and he originally came here, and there was a settlement where Nuts Pond is. It looked like something you'd see out of the Wild Wild West. Like, it was a settlement. Very primitive. There's no pictures of it, but there are some artist illustrations if you want to look into it. It was a fort, that's what it was. This little road right here, I've always liked for some reason. Just the way it's set back and quiet. But right now, we're gonna head over to where the original location of this building was, and we will conclude this video. We're in the Brady Sullivan Tower parking lot, but the house would have been somewhere in this general location that I'm looking at. And here's that photo I showed you earlier. As you can see where the building used to sit, and you can see the Smith Tower, or the Smith Estate, in the background. It does look like a tower from that picture. And it's a shame that they destroyed the Smith Tower, or even moved the Stark building. It's kind of sad. As we all know, that Manchester likes to destroy its history for some reason, as those were both very, very historic buildings that should have been left in place. But money talks, as during the 60s, I don't know who was in charge, but they like to destroy things as somebody was in someone's pocket. And I will be getting to the Smith estate likely sometime in the near future, as there's a lot of information about it and there's a ton of pictures. So I have been wanting to make that video and I will get to it. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.